Dennis says it's time to get going. Dennis, the computer says 12:15. Is that okay?
It's time.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Georgetown, Texas. As you already know, the greatest Rotary Club in the world. My name is George Lorg, and I have the privilege and honor of being your president and acting as your president this year. The following folks, Jerry Berry, Wayne Nero, and George Oliver.
I don't see Nero.
Wayne's not here.
Brent is. Brent is.
All right. Wow. Look at there. We're going to have to go with that one.
Let us pray. Loving God, as we come together today in fellowship, give us balance and faith in times of distraction and uncertainty. Bless all the men and women in harm's way. Thank you for an abundance of food in a world where many know only hunger. Please bless this food to the nourishment of thy body. Bless all the people that help prepare this meal. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
So we have a personal competition going, and I'm just loving this. So please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our milestones today, we have 5 member birthdays totaling 600 and, no. The first is Gonzalo Garza. Gonzalo, are you here today?
Nope.
Gonzalo has a birthday on January 10th, which is today, right? The 10th? Jim Doozer, Kat Phelps, Kevin Restine, and Peggy Brown all have birthdays this month, or this week. Spouse birthdays, Jim Alber's wife, Deborah, has a birthday coming up. Anniversaries, Gary and Grace Hertel, been married 28 years. It's a long time. Congratulations. And club anniversaries, Henry Yu has been with us for 2 years. Denise White has been with us for 2 years. Peggy Brown has been with us for 6 years. Salute.
Salute. Thank you very much. Please be seated. If anyone brought a guest, please stand and introduce your guest. While we're getting started with that, just let everyone know that, wow, you've got some good microphone there, Dennis. And Henry is videoing everything for us. It'll be all available on YouTube if you'd like to see the show again.
I have with me today Jim Clark. He's with Wells Fargo. He's a previous member of the West Boston Rotary Club, and he's looking for a new home. So welcome, Jim.
Welcome, Jim.
Hi, my name is Jerry Girardi. I'm recently retired. I was a Chief Information Officer for many years, and I live in Georgetown.
Dennis, you're guilty.
Guilty and don't walk too fast.
I'd like you to meet Sylvia Stoddy. Sorry, she's from Illinois. She's new in Georgetown, so everybody make her feel welcome.
Welcome, Sylvia. Thank you. Any other guests today? Visiting Rotarians. I see one hiding in the back corner back there. We have another guest?
Yeah, another Henry's got a guest.
I'm sorry.
I'm Henry. I brought my mom from DC.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome. There's a visiting Rotarian I see back in the back corner.
I never know whether to do this or not, but I was hitchhiking through town today, and Jerry picked me up. I was here.
Very good. Welcome, Gene. Any other visiting Rotarians? All righty. Dennis, you have the mic. It's your sergeant minute.
I'm innocent today. Oh, I see the pig isn't out there. I better race back and get the pig so that all of you people who are willing to put your dollar in for our polio program for not wearing your pin. Gary, you got your pin on? Found the first guilty one. Okay, you're on your own.
George Oliver, what do we have for membership today?
Thank you, George. First of all, is Camille Acosta here today? I didn't see her, but Camille has been proposed for membership. Her membership application, her proposal for membership is on the desk for the second week. So if you want to review that, it's there. And she's a wonderful woman. If you get a chance to meet her and talk to her, please do. I want to talk to you about another thing that I've been thinking about as membership director. It occurs to me that in our process of getting new members in, we induct them, we give them a red badge, we give them a sheet of requirements, and we say, go and do, and report back when you're done. It just seems to be pretty unstructured, almost not fair to people who are trying to gain an understanding of our club and are trying to understand Rotary in general. One of the things I would like to try and initiate with this club is to initiate a mentorship program whereby we assign one existing experienced member of the club to one red badge member. I don't think it would be a very intensive effort. It's just checking in every now and then. How are you doing on your red badge requirements? And then signing off at the end on their red badge sheet that yes, they have completed this. So if you feel that you might have a few extra minutes a week to help a newbie in our club kind of work their way through the red badge process, please come see me. I only need maybe 4 or 5 people. And as I say, it would be a one-on-one assignment. So keep that in mind, and hopefully you can step up and do that. One last thing is that one of the shyest members of our club, Jerry Berry Mostyn, is ready to do her classification talk. Jerry Berry, come on up.
Good afternoon. I know, I've got my heels on too. Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Berry Mostyn, and I feel I have totally come home to Georgetown. I am named after my mother, her name was Jerry June Berry. Berry was her maiden name. And she graduated from Southwestern in 1944. So I really do feel that I've come back home. Mother was named after one of grandmother's favorite brothers. Grandmother had 17 in her family. So it was really an honor that she chose Jerry, and that's why we spell it with the male gender. There's a funny story that my dad has always told. He was in A&M, captain of his troops, and they had graduated him early so he could go overseas. And he was already in boot camp. They issued him his winter wool uniforms. He comes back to Georgetown, June, 100-degree weather, and he said perspiration was just leaking off of his face, and he was trying not to faint in front of his future mother-in-law. Moved to Georgetown 2.5 years ago from San Antonio. I have family in the area. Was coming up here for birthdays, and so my stepdaughters kind of planted the seed about 3 years ago, and so it's been one of the blessed things that I've done in my life. I grew up in Houston. I have an older sister, 2 years older, and I say that I'm a typical Texas gal. Had horseback riding, fishing, hunting was the norm in my life. Very, very blessed. My dad's company had the project to clear the land for NASA in Houston. So I went to school with the original 7 astronaut kids. So this will kind of tell you my age right away. It was really interesting. Sometimes in these small towns, same clique or the girls get homecoming queen, head cheerleader. Well, all of a sudden these California girls and these Virginia girls come in. John Glenn's daughter, Lynn, was 2 years older. She was in my sister's class, and all of a sudden she started getting, the honors. But those girls really, I went to, in my class was Wally Sherrall's son, we called him Carrot Top. The Cooper girls were in my class. But here again, for the 60s, for my years, everything was so centered around church, school, and horseback riding. It was just a wonderful way to raise children. My adult life, I apparently have always been in sales and marketing. In my 20s, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and made sales calls to Fortune 500 companies. I've been a realtor for over 10 years. I work with Roger and with Jay Warren with Berkshire Hathaway, which has just been a total blessing for me to be able to help these newcomers to come in and understand our wonderful city that we have. I've been a widow for 19 years. I have stepchildren. I am a great-great-grandmother. My husband specialized in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. He had his own construction company, and I did the marketing for his company. Hobbies, I love dancing. I presently am taking tango lessons at Arthur Murray, Georgetown, and fishing and either saltwater or freshwater. So that is my story. I get to win my badge. I'm so excited. I put my girl big panties on. Thank you.
Jerry Berry, by doing your classification talk, you have fulfilled your red badge requirements and have earned your blue badge. I'll trade you this for a red one. And congratulations, Jerry Berry.
Who got to go to early act first night this morning? I ended up with more meetings than I go to. We had a couple of folks in the back. Thank you very much. Put those on your calendar if you can at all possibly fit that in your schedule. I unfortunately had other meetings at the same time, wasn't able to, but these are really a great opportunity to see a real significant difference in what's happening and what we're doing in the elementary schools in the area of character building. Next slide. Rampville tomorrow morning in Pflugerville. Got about 4 people that have signed up. We need a few more. We'll probably meet back in that back corner over there after Rotary. So if you're able to come, we'd certainly love to have you. Next slide. Michelle, are you here? I know I saw you walk in. There she is. Tell us about the training. She's got her mouth full. I knew I could get her. We'll give her a moment there. She did not know she was going to have to do this, so this is totally on the spot. But Michelle can handle it, and I know that already.
It's Saturday, January 25th. Anybody that's on the PR team, we definitely want you to come, but the whole club, we would love for anybody to attend. It's from 8 to 2 here in Georgetown at the public library. And we'll learn a little bit more about how to bring in with the club. So let me know if you're interested in coming.
Fantastic. So she already has a team of folks that help her with public relations. She would like to increase the size of that team, so if you're at all interested in that, go to the training, be a part of that, and Michelle would love to have you on her team. A couple dates to highlight. We've got a board meeting next week. We've got Foundation Gala. Billy Ray, anything you want to mention about the Foundation Gala?
Available for the foundation dinner, and they're going down. So we already have a table, and counting one that I heard about this morning, we have 12 people that are going, but we need to have more. Let's fill up the second table. And you do that. I think you each got a blast email from Carol and it's a very easy process. So sign up for the foundation gala. It's a big deal. If you've never been there, you would enjoy it.
And the speaker, we got to hear him last year at Pets, and he was fantastic, so you really enjoyed the speaker. All righty, Ron Garland. Ron Garland had some significant things occur in his life in the early 1970s that stuck with him for a long time. In 1970 itself, he joined professional service in Boy Scouts of America. In 1972, he joined Rotary. Now, when you think about it, you know, both Rotary and Boy Scouts of America started in, what, 1905?
1905 and 1910.
Okay, so they're very closely related. And so, you may not know this, but Ron has been running parallel careers since that time. Very strong advocate. As you see, he's wearing his Order of the Arrow. And that's the highest level, I believe, in Order of the Arrow there. And he has served all over the country. I'm not even going to list all the places. However, currently, on the board with the Austin Capital Area Council, and he's going to give us an update on that. Vice President for Endowment Development, and also Chair for the Smiling V Development Task Force, which I know he's going to talk about. He's an Eagle Scout, a Vigil Honor Member, Order of the Arrow we already talked about, Silver Beaver, and the most significant one, as I understand, the National Eagle Scout Association with the Outstanding Eagle Scout Recognition. Without any further ado, Ron Garland.
And I'm going to ask Barbara to help me do something here at the request of one of our fellow Rotarians. Thank you very much. When I was asked to present a program earlier this week, my response was, what would I do it on? And the editor of the Trumpet said, why don't you do it on scouting? And since I live with her, I said, well, that would be a pretty good idea. And then I got to thinking, no, I got to listening. And I got torn this morning of whether to speak on scouting or the second most important announcement of the week in America, which is that Mike Leach is coming to the Southeast Conference to coach at Mississippi State. Uh-oh, sounded like the applause y'all want me to talk about Mike Leach. I don't know that I can quite do that. What I do want to do very quickly is a little bit of a classification talk where there's some little known things that you don't know about me. And I'm very fortunate in that as a child, at the age of 7 or 8, I got to sit with my grandfather in his office in Itasca, Texas, and on his desk was the 4-way test. And I began to read those words of the 4-way test. You also probably don't know, some of you do. That gentleman was also the district governor of District 5870 in 1949 and 50. So Rotary goes back a long, long way in my life. And in fact, when I was taking the public speaking merit badge and working on it in the 7th grade, they said something about using props when you speak. And today I have 2 props. I have a compass from my scouting days, and that is a prop that kind of helped direct my life in more ways than one. Setting a direction for the balance of my life here on earth. The other prop is this sash that I wear, and I'll say a little bit more about that in just a few moments. But I think it's always interesting to reflect. And George has already stated that Rotary was founded, and it was founded in 1905. Scouting was founded in 1910 in America. It was brought to the UK in 1908 by Lord Baden-Powell, who, as he was in Mafeking, Africa, during the siege, found that he needed young men who had been trained with the ability to communicate, deliver messages, develop planning skills. And when he returned to England, he says, I have an idea. I have an idea that we need to bring young men together and help them develop leadership skills. And that was the founding of Scouting in the World in 1908. And in 1910, there was a gentleman by the name of William Boyce who was traveling in Europe, in England, and one night he was in a fog. He could not find the address that he was looking for. And a young man stepped up and said, may I help you? He said, I'm looking for this home. Sir, I will take you there. And he took him there, and Mr. Boyce tried to give the boy some money. And the boy said, I cannot accept your money. Why can't you accept my money? Because I am a scout. And my responsibility is to help other people. Think about those words. Think about how a movement that is now 110 years old came to America. Some people say that scouting hasn't changed appropriately. I'm going to reflect on that for a moment and in a very, very concrete way show you how scouting has changed over that 110 years. And I'm actually going to ask all of you that have had a scouting experience that if you would rise for a moment. But first, when I was 11 years old and I joined a troop, I could put my hand up in the scout sign. Today, I recognize that I have to use the other hand to get the finger to hold it down. So if you were in scouting, and would I ask you to stand for a moment as we reflect on one thing? Just look around. I think it's very important for all of us to recognize the words of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, and for me to share with you that one thing has not changed in 110 years in America. And that is when a troop meeting starts, three things happen. Young men pledge to our flag in a flag ceremony. Then they raise their right hands in the scout sign, and if you were a scout and choose to, raise your right hand. And then they repeat some words, a scout oath that says, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the scout law, to help other people at all times, and to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And then the scout law, which says a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the core of what scouting does and continues to do every week in this territory that we call the Capital Area Council. What I'm wearing today fits right in with a little statement I want to read from our Council Q3. Our Council President, Commissioner, and Scout Executive, and they bring their greetings to you today. And this is a simple statement, but with great meaning. Scouting's legacy is leadership. We teach it best when we allow young people to try, to make mistakes, and then learn to do differently the next time. All youth have the opportunity through scouting to become a leader while gaining the skills necessary to solve problems as a team, together. Our nation's future depends on this generation and its ability to learn these lessons. And that comes right out of the 2019 annual report of the council. It was mentioned earlier that I had the privilege of becoming an Eagle Scout in 1965. But in 1960 I was elected to the Order of the Arrow. That's this sash and what it represents. And in that Order of the Arrow Lodge in Fort Worth, Texas, my first elected position was as the vice chief of the lodge in charge of Order of the Arrow ordeals. For those of you familiar, that Order of the Arrow ordeal is young men and adults for a whole weekend in an outdoor setting, doing projects and providing leadership. That role had me responsible for 250 to 300 people, adults and scouts, with 15 to 20 different projects, with all the equipment necessary, all the things that had to happen to have a successful program. What a wonderful training experience that experience was. Now I want to talk about the Capital Area Council for just a moment. We're sitting in the Capital Area Council as one of the counties in a 15-county area of Central Texas. And I'm so pleased today to say to you that Scouting continues to grow. We had growth in 2019 in Cub Scouting with more than 10,000, in the Scouting program with more than 6,100, and in the after-school STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, and learning for life throughout our council, serving in excess of 5,600 kids. That's 23,314 young people in 508 scouting units, Cub Packs, Scout Troops, Venturing Crews, Explorer Posts, and the STEM program. That means something's happening every day, every evening across this 15-county council. We should all be proud that we're a part of a continued operation that can have that kind of success in today's challenging environment for young people. And I am particularly proud of that fact. Now, let's talk about girls. I mean, Kat told me that when time for questions came, this was really going to be difficult. And so leading into that, what I want us to be reminded of is girls in the scouting program. And what I want you to remember is that in 1969, the exploring program became co-ed. In 1983, Scoutmastership was open to females. 20 years ago, there was a need to form a new program called Venturing, and from day one, it was co-ed. So girls have been in scouting for many, many years under the auspices of developing leadership and community service. So it wasn't new last year. It wasn't new. It was just a change in direction brought about by parents who said, we need one place for our children to go. The result has been that girls are now in the Cub Scout program, and girls are now in girl troops throughout our council territory. In fact, our growth in units this year was predominantly because we went after, worked with, and organized troops made up of young ladies. I was privileged last summer, all summer long, to visit Lost Pine Scout Reservation and observe the troops in operation, both boy and girl troops coming together. The greatest fear was the girls were going to outperform the boys. And in certain instances, they did. But I got to back up to 1957. 1957, the men of the church and the First Presbyterian Church in Fort Worth decided it was time to have a scout troop at our church. I got so excited because I was going to turn 11 in 1958, and I wanted to go camping. And I wanted to get in a canoe, and I wanted to get in a rowboat, and I wanted to get in a swimming pool, and I wanted to climb rocks. Probably wanted to throw rocks too, but that was just part of the deal. And in 1958, I joined that scout troop. And one of the things I realized within the first 2 months of being in that scout troop was there was a 15-year-old boy in that troop, 4 years older than me, our senior patrol leader, living with his grandmother with no parents, and he was one of our leaders. And scouting filled his life with things that he wasn't getting anywhere else. And then I realized that that scout troop at about 13 was accepting all of the boys from the all-church orphanage in Fort Worth because we were the closest meeting place. And those kids would come to our troop to get that experience with adult role models. And my whole outlook on scouting became greater than getting in a canoe, getting in a rowboat, doing all those things. I began to visualize the impact we were having on young people that didn't have the advantages I had of a home. That, if you think about our culture today, was well before we had the number of single-parent families we have today, well before what we know today as a very difficult society. But the fact is, scouting units today, just as they've always done, serve that difficult situation in a way that they are welcomed and become a part of a group. For that, I am proud. And I think we should all be proud. So girls, background, change. Then I wanted to move to Smiling Bee. He said something about Smiling Bee Scout Ranch. And he also said something about currently it's my privilege to be the Vice President for Endowment Development for the Capital Area Council. About 5 years ago, we bought a piece of property up close to Liberty Hill called Smiling Bee. We've begun the development phase of that now. We've got all the infrastructure under the ground, and now we're looking at all the buildings that eventually will become a Western-themed Cub Scout resident and family camp where a kid gets to go into the old saloon, or he gets to go to the trading post, or he gets to go to the post office, and he also gets in the outdoors with other adults and other kids having a great time. What's different is that we're also working with, starting with the Liberty Hill School District, collaborative organizations to see how they can utilize this property during the week when scouting's not using it for weekend usage. Those are changes that are taking place. And I'm more than privileged to be a part of that leadership team. When we began that process, and they asked me to give some leadership to it, I said, we're going to do this, but we're going to form a Northern Williamson County Steering Committee to make it happen so it's not Austin-centric. And we're doing that. And it's going to be a fun kick when it's over. Fred Brent, if you want to talk to Stephen Snell a little bit, your counterpart out in Liberty Hill about the lunch we had, then I may have to take you to lunch. We may have to have a different conversation. But that's an exciting thing. And our council has an endowment fund that's in excess of $23 million. The spinoff of that helps us every year, both operationally and with capital projects. It's very important in this club to recognize some other folks. And I've asked two of them to come forward and say a few words about their scouting experiences. And first, I'm going to ask Glenn Beck to come forward. As you know, Glenn was a scoutmaster for more than 10 years, a troop right here. What you may not know is something I experienced during the Christmas holidays. I walked into the pit to get my regular pit sandwich, and there was Glenn, surrounded by college-age and beyond young people who all probably were Eagle Scouts in Troop 155. Glenn, share a few thoughts with us, would you?
Thank you, Ron. As Ron mentioned, I was had the opportunity to be Scoutmaster for Troop 155 that meets in San Gabriel Park for 11 years. I retired from that position just a few months ago. When Ron called me and asked me about this question of how have I seen the impact of scouting on these young men, I couldn't help but think about Starbucks. So every Monday night from September to May, I will be at the Scout Hut facing 50 young boys. And I always stop at Starbucks on my way, and I have my uniform on. And I can't tell you how many times a man would come up to me and would say one of two things. He said, I was an Eagle Scout, and I love scouting. Or he would come to me and say, I never made Eagle, but I loved scouting. And that was the impact it had on those lives. You know, I talk to these boys about what they think the purpose of scouting, and they'll mention outdoor camping and all the adventures associated with it. Rank advancement is real important to them as they try to get to the path of Eagle, and all those merit badges and all those patches we give out, and of course building that resume which they felt was necessary for them to get into college. Of course, being with friends was important. Having fun was important. I did not tell them that that's not really the purpose of scouting. That was the method of scouting. The purpose of scouting was to build these young men so they make decisions based on the principles of the Scout Oath and Scout Law. To learn the responsibility of citizenship in terms of how we treat our flag and how we vote for people. To understand the need for service to our community and our environment. To learn leadership in terms of how they lead their patrols, lead their troop. At one point, very last point, I had a senior patrol leader that had a staff of 4 people, quartermaster, chaplain aide, gosh, I forgot, scribe, and then he also had a staff of 7 patrol leaders who had a staff. So this young man at 16 was running an organization of over 70 people. And so leadership was real important. And the last thing that was real important to me that I worked with them was self-esteem. For them to understand their capabilities and be proud of those accomplishments. So using the methods of scouting and the adult leadership that you worked with me, we provided the platforms in which these young men developed these skills. Challenging them on campouts. At the end of every meeting, I put all the boys around in a circle. We have a Scoutmaster minute. They noted it always lasted more than a minute. But I would talk about the principles of young men as they had a Scoutmaster conference after each rank advancement. I'm happy to announce that I had 40 Eagle Scoutmaster conferences. But equally important to those boys that didn't make Eagles are those boys that made first class and beyond, because I know that we were impacting their lives. So we would discuss in those Scoutmaster conferences of how to understand and investigate their leadership skills, how to manage relationships with their family, school, and their other scouts, and how they had to demonstrate the Scout Oath and Scout Law. So I've seen the impact that scouting has had on these young men, but also seen the impact that these young men have had on our community. They've been impactful in our schools, churches, and community with their service and how they present themselves to their peers and adults. So I remain convinced that scouting is the best youth program worldwide. And one more thing. I'm equally excited as girls enter the Cub Scout and Scouting programs. We have one troop here in Georgetown with over 25 girls, and I know that in a couple years you'll see our first Eagle Scout from Georgetown, Texas. Last thing, at the end of every meeting we would say, last thing, and every boy would say, today is a great day to be a Scout. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. I do want to recognize a couple of other people because we are part of the San Gabriel District, one of 13 districts in our council. The first district chairman of that district was Gary Zarite. He's been followed by Rodney Morales and Wilson Morris, all members of our club. Gary's not here today, but he's implemented the STEM program here in Georgetown, and Mike Douglas has been a great help to him this year. I made a commitment that we would be through by 1 o'clock so that George could lead us in the four-way test on time. But we're going to ask Ray Barron to come and say just a word or two about his experiences. And then I'll wrap this up. And I'm not going to leave time for questions, Cap.
So how long do I need to talk to make sure that the questions don't happen?
About a minute.
Okay. My experience with scouting started actually when I was in grade school and I became a Cub Scout. I moved through the ranks and then moved into Boy Scouting and served, was involved with multiple troops as we moved all the time. My sophomore year in high school, I left scouting when, like many young men of that age, I got distracted by fumes, gasoline and perfume. I got re-involved with scouting when my firstborn actually became a Tiger Cub. And then he was followed 3 years later by his younger brother. Over that next 12 years, I served as a den leader, in pack leadership, in troop leadership, and with an explorer post that is now a venture group. It taught me a lot, but the biggest thing it taught me was patience. One of the things I think that scouting does extremely well has kind of been already covered in how it teaches leadership. And the way I always envisioned scouting when I was working as an adult leader was that it was a youth leader-run organization with adult supervision. The boys really, in a lot of ways, lead the troop. With the patrol leader, the senior patrol leaders in that organization. That's what teaches them leadership. The other thing I feel is very important is that it helps them to build esteem by giving them a safe environment in which to fail. It challenges them to projects, and it's great when everything goes smoothly, but they learn a lot more when they fail and have to overcome the consequences in those challenges. And I think that the Smiling View Ranch that Ron has provided leadership is going to be a huge asset to this community, not only for Cub Scouts, but because it's going to be open to so many other youth groups and provide them with a property where they can experience the outdoor and those kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I do want to acknowledge that also in the room today are other members of that Smiling V Task Force, Wilson Morris, Chris Cash. We're a part of that team, Glenn Beck, that's going to make that become a reality. Let me close with a question I was asked 25 years into my career. Someone asked me, he said, what's the difference between your football experiences in high school and scouting? I'd never been asked that question before. And I thought about it for a moment. I said, it's really pretty simple. My last game of high school football, the coaches were sending the plays in. We had to wait for them to tell us what to do. In scouting, Scoutmaster sits off by the side and allows kids to make decisions, even if they make bad decisions. I want to say thank you for spending the time you've allotted me. Obviously, the audience knows about scouting. Hopefully, I brought you a couple of fresh insights into things that still occur. George, thank you. It's 1 o'clock.
You know Ron is a scout because the thing he wanted to be sure he took with him off the podium here was his compass. And you know, I do a lot of work in Guatemala, and in my backpack is always a compass. So I know where I'm going. Yeah, we've got GPS, we've got all these fancy toys, but that compass, it doesn't fail you. The other ones do. Any announcements for the good of scouting? How about the good of Rotary?
I'd be happy to be around to talk to anybody who wants to too, because we didn't have time.
Very good, Ron. Thank you very much. And Ron, we also have a book for you to sign, as you already know. All right. No announcements? Please stand and join me in the four-way test. First. Truth. Second.
Fair to all concerned.
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
We are adjourned.